Happy Friday, y'all. Happy Friday. Wait, let me get these questions set up for us real quick. Okay. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Coffee Buzz. I don't have the gavel stick with me right now. I just moved. I got a lot of things happening, a lot of moving parts. So we got to go without it, but we'll get it back. It's here in spirit because it is in my house. I just don't know where it is in my house. Anyways, Coffee Buzz Friday brought to you from the beautiful state of Minnesota, a very special place to me. Indeed, this week it was April 1st. Hopefully you guys all made it through that. I was wondering today about how when does April 1st, what is the connection of April 1st throughout your entire life from the youth, maturity, and then old age? When is it acceptable? Because it feels like it's always acceptable and it's always on play when you're in college for sure, and high school for sure. And then as you mature, is it still a thing in your late 20s, 30s, 40s? And then are you pulling pranks on people in your 50s, 60s, 70s? And then how far is too far of a prank? That could be a good coffee buzz question. But I'm going to save some of those because I got some special things coming up. And hopefully this is the last coffee buzz you guys find with me by myself, at least for the foreseeable future. Long stretch ahead of being back in Minnesota. Some of my best buddies live here. Some unbelievable people who mean a ton to me live in these parts of the country, and we are setting up a studio, kind of evolving a little bit with the podcast, but we're setting up a studio this weekend at Minnesota Mash in Savage, Minnesota. There's a lot of history through MASH, but old Steve McGuigan, the old bull, hoping to have him on these with me from now on. So look forward to that coming out. Hopefully this is the last one with me by myself. And what will make this one good for me being alone is not that Steve can't answer these, and I think we're going to get Nick Busett on the show here too for the summer. But not that he can't answer these, but these ones are directed towards breathing. So I would imagine they're directly sent to me. So from Zach Garber, we got a question from him. Sorry, I didn't mention some of the people on the last questions, the last buzzes, but I can see these pretty clearly right now. So, how should you breathe throughout the day? How should you breathe when in competition? I believe Zach is a ball player or an athlete. How should you breathe throughout the day? How should you breathe when in competition? So let's answer this pretty simply and direct. And I'm gonna take this out of competition, and I'm just gonna use the word intense exercise so that we can hit a more generalization or more general population of people, because I do think all of us should have intense training in our schedules, right? It should be a part of our lives. So intense training, do you have to do it 5 days a week, 7 days a week? No, I think that myself and tons of professional athletes have learned the falseness of that. But I do think that you should have some sort of intense training at least 2 times a week, maybe 3 times a week. So whether intense training is a heavy speed day, heavy explosion day, and then 2 intense upper body, and not 2 upper bodies, 1 upper body, 1 lower body, and then 1 full explosive speed day. And then I think with the upper and lower body, you can also pair something like a Tabata, something that's like a 4 minute intense exercise that kind of just sparks your heart rate and gets you up, and that should be intensity, right? So the reason why I say that is because how should you breathe in those situations in competition or intense life? I think breathing for intensity or in competition in general, for athletes, you compete maybe a little bit more than that, but breathing in those situations is breathing however you can to survive. So mouth breathing is fine in competition because you're competing. You're not necessarily thinking about your breath. You can use your breath in micro standpoints. Micro meaning I can use my breath in little minor moments to become aware of my breathing. And I can certainly do some things to lower my heart rate in those situations or oxygenate my motor skills and sort of like get clear headed and get present. Absolutely. But the majority of competition is mouth breathing. I think you're mechanically unsound, which is fine. I think that's part of the exchange of energy when you're in competition, especially in intense exercise. When you're sprinting max effort or you're max effort training or you're doing something that's strenuous, you're going to breathe faster. Your heart rate's going to be up. You're going to mouth breathe. That's what creates what's called anaerobic. Anaerobic is how we feel that lactic acid. You feel that burn sensation, and that's how we get sore. Being aerobic is the flip side to this. So how should you breathe throughout the day? You should breathe aerobically, which is breathing through your nose. So nasal breathing only, tongues at the roof of the mouth, your jaw and your airways relaxed, your airways open. That's where the tongue sits at the top of the palate. And your nasal breathing, rather slow, rather rhythmically, and certainly quiet. So you shouldn't really hear your breathing throughout the day. And sound in your breathing should be an indicator of what you're doing for training. So if I'm going for a walk, I should be able to maintain slow, quiet nasal breathing. As the walk gets longer or faster, or today I went for a walk and I was walking up a hill. When I'm walking up the hill, I should, if I need to breathe through my mouth for a second or so, fine. When I'm by myself, I try to even maintain an awareness to nasal breathing only the entire time. But what you'll notice is your sound actually rises, so you can hear your breathing. And that's just an indication of the stress is going up. But so when you're chilling or hanging out or reading or sleeping or watching a movie or with people, your breathing should be really quiet and it should be through the nose. That should be the indicator that you should be breathing throughout the entire day. So think about it. When you're aerobic, breathing through your nostrils, you're oxygenating your body. Your body feels safe. Your nervous system feels safe. Your heart rate is neutralized. You're in you're in your natural homeostatic state, which is really important. And you want to live in those states. You want to be balanced, and you want to live in those states as often as you can until you're intensely exercising or competing. And so when you go into competition, now I'll direct it strictly towards the athlete and go right to competition. When you're in competition, now all of a sudden you have the fuel tank to exhaust yourself in training in your competition. So if you've exhausted yourself anaerobically outside of competition, outside of competing, then you have less fuel essentially when you're in competition. So metaphorically, you would hopefully enter all your competitive states with a full gas tank. And that happens on how you breathe throughout the day. And so how you breathe throughout the entire day should be nasal breathing. You can put your hands at the side of your ribs right now, anyone who's listening to this, and you can breathe and feel your ribs expand horizontally. That it's like a lateral movement. When you inhale, you'll feel your ribs expanding, and then they're going to lift slightly. And then when you exhale, feel them come down and in. You'll feel the ribs just expand. It should be a horizontal movement. You don't want to see a lot of movement above your nipples, into your upper chest, into your shoulders, your collarbone, anything like that. You want to feel a horizontal, slow and low, baby. That's what you should be thinking about. Slow and low through the nose. That keeps you oxygenated, keeps you clear thinking, keeps you connected and mindful, and it keeps you healthy. And when you get in a competition, breathe however you can. And in those little moments, whatever sport you play, in those little moments where you get to relax, try to just breathe deep into your nose, out through your mouth. And that'll help you lower your heart rate, kind of get you back into that headspace. Hope that helps. Good question. Next question, Isaac Dean. This is a Minnesota fellow. I met him years ago. I haven't seen him in a minute. I saw him a few years ago, actually, I think. Three Leaf, I believe. My guy's still with them. Should check them out. I hope you're living well, brother. Haven't seen you in a while. But how did you best stay consistent in your journey from mouth breather to nose breather? So I'm still on the journey. So it's funny you asked me that because how did I best stay consistent from mouth breather to nose breather? I don't believe that I've become a nose breather. I think that my anatomy, I'm still hung up on my anatomy. And I'm doing a lot of stuff right now to try to understand my anatomy. And a lot of it just happens with my jaw structure and my tongue. So I have a tongue tie as an adult. We just had my kid's tongue tie fixed and snipped and saw immediate change in his behavior. Immediate change. Now, obviously, he's an infant, a little baby, but immediate change. Went from this high, kind of a hyper energy, uh, stressed out nervous system baby. And once we changed the lip tie and the tongue tie, immediately went to this calm, low stress nervous system baby. Insane experience for someone like myself who's into physiology and breathing and health in our nervous system. Insane, insane. And it honestly is it's been one of my, obviously I like being a dad for dad purposes, but as a coach and someone who's in this world, to have an infant and be able to experience the development phases of a baby in real time has been crucial for me in my development, because it's another indicator of my personal, I mean, a lot of people have this belief, but my belief is that physiology is before psychology. I think that we are a byproduct of our physiology in the way in which we think and make decisions. And so to watch my son's physiology was anatomy, but that changed the physiology, and then the physiology shifted his psychology. Obviously, he's not a grown adult with experience and interpretation and a filtering framework of how he perceives reality. I get that. But the physiology changed for sure, and his moods changed for sure. And so that's really intriguing for me. It's inspiring for me. Now, where I'm stuck at is, years ago is when I came in touch with the importance of nasal breathing. I had never, and I'm sure I had heard of that, but I had never comprehended nasal breathing over mouth breathing until about a decade ago. And when I did, I was so in awe of that information that it really started how I think it starts with everybody. It just started with awareness. And I noticed how much I just did not breathe through my nose. I'd never come to that until I became aware of it. So once you expose yourself to anything and you become less ignorant to the thing, you become aware of it. First of all, it's slightly painful to become aware of something, because you realize how non-aware and for me in this scenario, how much I wasn't breathing through my nose. And so I really had to repattern myself through just consistent reps. So if we use the token 20,000 breaths a day as as a platform here, a baseline, I was noticing that I was taking like 5,000 breaths through my nose. So I was way off the mark of being able to breathe through my nose throughout a day. And so when I initially realized that and came to grips with that, I started to understand that my journey started with just becoming aware of breathing through the nose. So anytime I would not be in conversation, or I would be out of tune with my work or not working out, or, doing anything like that, and I could spend time being aware of my breath, I would just put my tongue at the roof of my mouth and I would breathe through my nose slowly, calmly, quietly. And I would just try to get reps that way. I would work in the morning, I would meditate, but it wasn't as much of a meditation where I'm at now. It was more of a meditation for practicality, meaning I would breathe in for 5 seconds, pause, breathe out for 5 seconds, pause. And I would count that actually for about 10 to 15 minutes, just so I knew I was getting reps of breathing through my nose. And obviously, tape my mouth. I tape my mouth when I go to sleep. I tape my mouth when I nap. I try to train breathing through my nose as much as I can. Anything aerobic, I try to breathe through my nose. All that stuff with the tape, I'm not a medical doctor, so, go get your medical advice there if you need it. But that's helped me a lot. And in recent years, I've really started to gather how much, back to the question of the journey, how far I still have to go, because I've really started to understand how much I can't outdo my anatomy and my structure. And so I have braces on currently. I tried to bring the teeth together to make them not crooked. And I do feel like I've seen a drastic increase in my gut. I haven't, that's not a subjective, that's objective. Objectively, my gum health has 100% improved. And as my gum health has improved, that's connected to your cardiovascular health. So I do feel like I've become healthier. I do feel healthier. I definitely feel more energy with my gum health improving. And I think that that's related to my teeth being straighter. And aesthetically, it's a lot more pleasing, but that's like the third intention of my teeth. I need some functionality of them, and then I need them to be able to align myself, right? So the functionality of the alignment becomes my bite. I've definitely been able to see my bite improve, which I think has released pressure in my jaw, and the teeth have straightened out, which has made for healthier gums. I definitely, obviously, also equate that to like I've been using a water pick to floss my teeth after every meal I have. I've done that for over a year now, and obviously brushing your teeth regularly. I've always been good with that. And I think that that has shown an improvement in my health and my breathing. I am this last phase with my braces. I'm trying to widen my teeth, which this was like the last, and I'll see how I'll have to report back on this in a few months. My intentions of widening my teeth were to open up the airway because one of the things I struggle with is my airway. My tongue naturally sits, it wants to sit at the bottom of my mouth, and my mouth wants to be open. And I have a narrow airway. So my airway, it wants to collapse, which if I'm not careful when I sleep, I can experience sleep apnea if I'm not careful. I have to really put my body in a good position to breathe through my nose. I have to tape my mouth at night to breathe through my nose, and I got to be aware of my tongue. So I'm in like phase two of this experience. I'm trying to learn how to keep my tongue at the roof of my mouth and try to create that to make it a habit. And I'm trying to do as many things as I possibly can without some sort of surgical procedure, which it's not really a fear at this point. The more that I go into my journey, it looks like something that's it's in my future of trying to just widen my palate. Whether it sounds like there's some procedures I'm learning about called the MARPI, and I have some doctors that I'm talking to about this, and I haven't confirmed that I'm doing this. I'm just looking into it and digesting it. But yeah, I think a lot of the stuff is what I'm just doing now with my kid, and things that I didn't do and things that I know that my generation didn't do as kids, and things that we need to somewhat reverse the lifestyle changes is breastfeeding. Tongue ties have seems like that's become an evolutionary thing through our lifestyles. I don't think we are supposed to have tongue ties, but I think paying attention to the tongue tie, making sure my son is breastfed regularly. My wife's incredible at this stuff. We're definitely going to breastfeed for a while. And that you can see that. You see that strength in the jaw, and making sure his lips are closed. Anytime we see his mouth open, we close his lips so that he's breathing through his nose. We make sure we've done this before we had a kid, but I have an air doctor that I travel with, the humidifier. I always have air doctors in my home to clean the air in homes. A lot of air in homes is very not clean, and there's a lot into that you can dive into and study. And you got to think about it, we're not filtering air when we're in our homes, and a lot of times we're just heating it up artificially or cooling it down artificially. And a lot of things with the way that wood is made, a lot of the stuff that we use to upkeep our porches or our chairs, all that stuff actually hurts the air in your room, in your houses. Checking your homes for mold, being aware of that type of stuff. All that stuff can change the way you breathe and hurt your nasal breathing. So yeah, I don't I know I'm not completed on my journey, to be honest with you. I'm still in it, and I'm learning all the time. And I think that's part of the journey, is just learning. And everything I just shared, that's my journey. And everybody else's journeys are different. And sometimes we make wrong decisions, and that helps us. Do I think that the braces was a great decision? Time will tell. I think I could have made some other decisions before the braces. And does that bum me out? Sure. But does it? No, because if it weren't for that, I wouldn't be studying things like the MARPI or looking into airway growth, or where the size or the length between my molars. And I wasn't even on I wasn't even on that wavelength when I first got into nasal breathing 10 years ago. Wasn't even on my radar. So, really it's just learning about the modern life, and how do you maybe combated is the right word, but how do you live and exist with vitality in the modern world? Because so much of what impacts us now is just the environment in which we live in. And that really impacts your breath. So try to eat healthy, try to chew foods. I like foods that you have to chew to strengthen your jaw as an adult, but it's a lot harder to do as an adult as it is as a kid, you know? So you're trying to beat back your anatomy a lot in my case. Great question. Last question of the day. Here we go. Big Brent, what a stud. Out of Oregon. What are you specifically curious about right now that's setting your heart on fire? Different question than the breathing ones. What are you specifically curious about right now that's setting your heart on fire? Wow. What are you specifically curious about right now that's setting your heart on fire? Right now, I'm really curious about building a community. That's setting my heart on fire because I've done this a lot in my life. I've really been, for whatever reason, God had me in positions where I've been the leader a lot in communities. I've been the energy giver. I've had to be the front runner and someone who's constantly trying to move the needle. And I kind of burn out of that a few years ago. I got tired of that. And I went into an isolated state for a few years. I think a lot of us did that around COVID, and a lot of us are doing that now, but I think it's less, I think we've become more comfortable with that maybe as a society. And maybe that has something to do with social media and the digital world and the fact that we can communicate with so many people without ever seeing them. And we have created so many communities that are now online. I'm not going to argue for that being good or bad. I'm just acknowledging it as a thing. But for me, my heart is set on creating a community around A Moment with Mart, this show, and it's creating a community around contemplation and creating a community of thinkers, which is centered in frameworks of philosophy. And I'm just trying to learn what that is because my heart doesn't light on fire to do that with 100,000 people. It doesn't light on fire to fill up stadiums or arenas of that. And I did once have my heart set on fire for that for sure. And maybe it does maybe it does. Maybe something about a community that does build. I guess I'd be open to the potential of it filling up stadiums and arenas of people who want to get together and think. I just don't know if my heart is set on fire for that as a desire or the pursuit. I think the thing that I'm in search of and is happening is I think that the next wave of life is going to, it might sound odd, but I think it's going to be thinking. I think people will gravitate to environments where there's thinking involved. And you're going to want to be with groups of people where you're able to contemplate freely without definitive answers. I think that's happening really quickly, but I think we're coming to that in a position of awareness really quickly. I don't feel like we're coming to that in actual completion of it. I think that and where I mean this is like so much of what it seems like we do is always driven for commerce. And so it's hard to go anywhere now as a practitioner or a student of anything and have it be a part of commercialization. Everything that we're doing is commercialized. And getting together as an adult, maybe this is happening in younger generations. I think getting together as an adult is a lot harder than it is when you're younger, especially when you have more responsibilities. So I think that in general that makes it harder to find a community. But really what I'm seeking is to create an arena of high thinking, whatever high is in that. We'll say create an arena of contemplative thinkers. That's what my heart is set on right now, is driving home, because, and I think about this regularly because it's on top of the modern day topic, but AI the more I learn about it, that's doing all of our thinking for us. And so my thought of contemplation is a soulful. I use the word contemplation because I think contemplation is the difference of definitive and contemplative thinking. Is contemplation is connected to your spirit and your essence. Definitive is connected to your ego. And I think that the space that my heart desires is acknowledging the definitive, informative era of egotistical material thinking, which is fine. Just acknowledging that and becoming aware of how reality thinks or wants you to think, or how your reality thinks, because there's very basic principles to psychology and human behavior. Humans are, for one, they're married, they're contracted into paradox. So every human you meet is insecure. It's a fallacy to think that it's baked into the hardwiring of how we think. And every human you meet judges. Every human you meet has an ego, and the ego is useful and it's extremely painful. It hurts you as well. And so we're married to this paradoxical life, and we have a central nervous system. We have a parasympathetic and a sympathetic nervous system. We have fight or flight, and we have rest and adapt. Like, these are very principle driven biological systems that is definitive. My name is definitively, my real name is Harvard James Martin. That is my definitive name. Now I could definitively have that changed, but definitively that's my name. I have a social security card number. I'll keep that between me and myself. I have a bank account. I have all these things that everybody else has, and these are definitive numbers and parts of our lives. Contemplation to me is the new, is the not, maybe not new. It's actually very old. It's ancient. That's what the philosophers were, the Greek philosophers. I think that that's running itself back into modern society, is the ability to contemplate without definitive answers. And I think that that will be the psychological pursuit of awareness to the soul. I think that that's heavily needed now. But I would like to, my heart desires to not gatekeep a community like that. It's more to find communities and potentially be somebody who is a forerunner and leading something like that. Again, this isn't like a take over the world community. It's more just like I'm trying to find a pocket community that experiences contemplation as the reasoning for why we're there. Hopefully that answers that. I feel like that's what my heart is desiring. Okay. Happy Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Cheers.